Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Just bear with me a few moments while I let people into this meeting, and we'll begin in just 2 minutes. We're going to give everyone just another minute to enter the room, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out on a Wednesday night to join us. A lot of information we're going to go over. Don't feel like you have to take notes. This video and the slides will be sent to everyone after the meeting. So just letting a few more people in from the weight room. Okay, we are good to go. Gabby, if you can keep an eye on the weight room and let anybody in that may pop in late, I'd appreciate it. To everyone who is joining us, please feel free to use the chat to put your questions in. I'll try to get to them throughout the presentation tonight, but I'll also ask people to come on to video and off mute to ask questions at the end of the presentation tonight as well. So you can either throw your questions into the chat, or I'll ask people to ask questions at the end of the presentation, whichever you prefer. All right. So welcome everyone to the All-American Model United Nations Travel Team info session for the 2023-2024 school year. I'm really happy that this is the first time since COVID, since 2019. It's been a really long 4 years. This is the first time we have a full travel team roster of conferences for everyone to choose from. And obviously there's some pretty big structural changes that we've made with All-American Model UN. We're going to go through everything. We're going to go through the conferences. We're going to go through the cohort system. We're going to go through enrollment instructions. We're going to go through financial aid and how to register. So all this information will be covered tonight. Again, if you have questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat, or at the end of this presentation, I'll ask people to come off of mute and turn their camera on if they so feel inclined to ask questions of myself or our program director. So if you don't know me by now, my name is Frank Pavlikevich. I'm the founder and director of All American Model UN. I started All American Model UN in 2011. I've been doing Model UN, like most of you, since high school. When my English teacher came to me my junior year, told me about Model UN, described what it was, and I instantly knew it was something that I was going to absolutely love, and I've been doing it ever since. I've coached literally hundreds of students, both in the United States and around the world. I'm currently located in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and in addition to Model UN, I've also been very actively involved in the startup community for a number of years. I just came back from Cambridge. I spent the last 2 years in Central Virginia helping to start up the deep technology startup system down there. So that's something I'm really passionate about, something I also bring to what I do when I mentor my Model UN students. If Gabby's here, I know she was having some tech issues, but if she wants to pop on and introduce herself, now would be the time.
Still having some video issues, but happy to go ahead and introduce myself. For those of you who I've not had the pleasure of meeting before, my name is Gabby McKay. I'm a rising senior at American University, where I study international relations and economics. I am also an active member of American University's #1 ranked Model UN team for the second year in a row, which is very exciting, and a former All-American student of a few years, just about 2 years, and transitioned into the program director role just over 2 years ago. So I'm very passionate about mentoring and have a pretty unique experience set, having been both a competitive delegate and still an actively competing one at that, as well as also somebody who's been able to see the trends and changes in high school Model UN. So I'm extremely excited to join you all for my third year as program director, and very excited, as Frank mentioned, to fill out an entire year's worth of competitive roster for the first time since COVID.
Thank you, Gabby. For those of you that have already done your one-on-one meetings with me after you registered or were accepted, you probably heard this. I'm going to tell this story again, but All American Model UN started with a single team of 12 students that we took to Beijing, China, to compete in what was then Asia's largest Model UN conference. Over 3,800 students from 35 different countries were in attendance, and we were the lone U.S. representation at that conference. And since then, we have grown into so much more. We started getting invited to competitions all around the world in Europe, Latin America, and other parts of Asia. We then began to expand to attend US conferences and ran our summer academies. And then we obviously have a plethora of online resources as well. But our mission is really to validate the experience of Model UN, to showcase the skills and the tenacity of students that are doing Model UN, both to your high schools, your communities, your families, and then obviously to your colleges and universities that you will be applying to at some point. And we've had a really great track record of helping students to validate their experience, be heard, and form a community around an activity that we all really deeply love. When I'm teaching Model UN, and for those of you that have gone through the summer academies, you know that I like to preach these 4 key success variables. Everything that we do at All American Model UN revolves around these 4 key success variables, because regardless of whether we're talking about high school Model UN, your high school career, your collegiate career, your actual career, I've been doing this long enough where I have students that are well into their early careers. We look at these 4 key success variables because they translate: preparation, pattern recognition, advocacy, and emotional intelligence. Model UN is the ultimate vehicle to help teach and strengthen each of these skills in our students, and that's what makes it such an incredibly powerful learning tool. A little bit about All American Model UN. We are a results-driven organization. Over 95% of our students who compete with us win individual accolades at conferences across the country. And then these are a few more stats that we always like to broadcast so you have a better sense of who All American is. We receive over 200 applications per year. We accept about 50% of students onto the travel team, which isn't representative of us trying to turn people away, but rather accept them into the travel team. That's sort of our job. Students come from all over the country and even internationally to work with us. About 50-50 between public and private schools, and about 50-50 again between our gender ratio. But then what students go on to have beyond All American Model UN when they enter collegiate is nothing short of amazing. Over 34% of our students end up at Ivy League plus schools. 88% are going to top 30 universities. And a question that I've been getting asked a lot recently is, what do our students study once they get to college? About 50% end up studying international relations, political science, history, economics, or law, and they fit into that funnel. But 50% of our students actually go into things like medicine and public health, business, communications. So Model UN doesn't have to pigeonhole you into a particular major or career set. I've seen students take the skills that they develop doing Model UN and go to all corners of career and academia. So our travel team is why you guys are all here. Like I said, we are a competitive, results-driven organization. We are, as far as we're concerned, the best high school Model UN team on the planet, and our record stands of proof of that. But the goals of the travel team are more beyond simply winning awards. We're looking to build skill sets, to build relationships, and curate a community of like-minded citizens that share their passion for international relations, history, and political science. But just to brag a little bit, this is our history of delegation awards throughout the years since 2012, when we attended that very first conference in Beijing. You'll see the international conferences here highlighted in blue, and then you'll see how we began transitioning to attending more US conferences, especially in the post-pandemic years. Now we're excited to have a pretty even mix of both international and US conferences for our students to attend. The big structural change we're making this year is introducing the travel team cohorts. This is completely new to All-American Model UN. In the past, when students were accepted, they would sort of just sit in this state of limbo until they decided to take the jump and enroll on a conference program with us. And about 40% of the students that were accepted never ended up working with us because they weren't able to build trust with us. We weren't able to showcase what we were capable of. And now the cohort model is a way that we can start working with students that perhaps haven't worked with us in the past, build up that trust with families, and also coach important skills so we can get students ready to start competing with us. The tuition for the cohort, the annual cohort, is $40 a month or $360 per school year. It's up to you to choose if you want to enroll for the full school year, half a school year, or pay by the month. In this first year, because this is a pretty big transition for our returning students, we're giving everyone a $360 travel grant. We're only going to be doing this year, but we wanted to make sure that we could facilitate this transition as easily as possible. And then we also changed the acceptance types. So in the past, we had a differentiation between our US travel team, our international travel team. We got rid of that. We now just have one travel team. The only difference is that we have two different acceptance types. We have a training acceptance and a full acceptance. And I'll talk about the training acceptance in more detail in just a bit. But again, our goal is to work with as many students that are passionate about this activity as possible. Just a really important note that you must be enrolled in the cohort in order to attend conferences. So no more can you just attend a single conference and that be the only point of contact with All-American Model UN. We really want to be active in student lives throughout the academic year. So we want to be able to work with students on a more consistent basis. And we'll be able to do that every other week on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll meet with the entire cohort. We'll do breakout sessions. We'll do exercises. We'll do conference prep and conference review. Even if you're going to a conference with your school or outside of All-American Model UN, we want to be there to help. The deadline to apply and confirm your enrollment for the cohort is September 15th. You're going to be hear me say September 15th a lot throughout this presentation. It's a really important date so that we have everything set up successfully for this school year. For those of you that may have gotten training acceptances, you may be wondering, what is a training acceptance? What do I have to do to get a full acceptance? Our goal is to get you to a full acceptance as quickly as possible. You're going to meet with the program director and I. We're going to establish a personalized learning goal, set of learning goals for the fall semester. And if everything goes correctly, you'll be able to join us on a full acceptance by time the spring semester in January begins. I mentioned here some of the competencies that we'll be testing on. If you've already passed some of these in the summer academies, that's great. Those are going to carry over. We're going to continue to work until you earn each of those 7 competencies. The other way that you can get a full acceptance, and this is something new to the All-American system, is we have 2 conferences in the fall at the University of Connecticut and Yale Model UN's conference in Seoul, South Korea, that we're deeming open enrollment conferences. So regardless of if you have a full acceptance or a training acceptance, you can go ahead and enroll in those 2 conferences. And if Gabby and I see what you're able to do and you're able to perform at the levels that we expect from our travel team members, we'll go ahead and bypass the entire competency process and award you a full membership. So if you're interested in that, if you have further questions, please go ahead and let me know. Happy to talk through that in more detail. I wanted to pause here and really explain the benefits of attending a Model UN conference. I know we have some parents here, so students, I know this will probably go over with things that you've already known for a while, but explaining what the benefits of attending Model UN conferences are, I think is really important. Model UN is the pinnacle of an experiential learning experience. I think it's really unparalleled in terms of learning outside of the classroom because of the skills that students are able to develop by participating and succeeding in the activity. And when I talk about Model UN, I usually talk about it in terms of hard skill development and life skill development, what I used to call soft skill development. The hard skill development is what a lot of parents are interested in. We're talking about analytical skills, research, solution solution development, academic writing, public speaking, block management, management, all of those hard skills that'll really translate into high school, collegiate, and beyond. The life skill development, though, I think is equally as important. And this is really intricately tied with travel, I believe. Parents are consistently telling me about improvements that they see in their sons and daughters by doing this type of activity, because it stresses the importance of real time, real world time management, prioritization, goal setting, teamwork. And multiple parents have spoken about the levels of adaptability, maturity, and problem solving skills that their students demonstrate after participating in All American Model UN. So I think it's really important just to take a moment to point all of those things out. So the U.S. conferences, let's start with our U.S. conferences, and then we'll dive into our international programs. This year, we have 4 U.S. conferences on our roster. We have the University of Connecticut, which again is an open enrollment for both training and full acceptances. And then we have 3 conferences that you can enroll in only if you've been given a full acceptance. So Columbia University in New York, Neiman, which is hosted by Georgetown in DC, and then Northwestern's conference right outside of Chicago. You can read all of these details. We try to make these packages as inclusive as possible. So what is included for the U.S. conferences is basically everything except for the meals. We will take the students out for one team delegation dinner on Saturday night. And then everything else we try to wrap up included in the tuition. Students are expected to travel independently to whichever airport is assigned for the designated cities for those conferences. And we're happy to work with you to arrange and pick out those best flights that are most beneficial for your son or your daughter. A lot of times students are coming from the same geographic areas, so we'll suggest some itineraries that we think multiple students can get on just to help facilitate that travel process. To be clear, a seat is not guaranteed on one of these U.S. conference teams until tuition has been paid or a monthly installment plan has been agreed upon. We will have caps for each of these conferences that we'll go over, and we're going to fill those on a first come, first enrolled basis. So the first conference we're going to be going to is at the University of Connecticut. We'll be using Bradley International in Hartford as our designated airport for that. You can also arrive via train or bus into the Hartford Union Station. We'll do all of the transit to campus. Here are some of the conference dates and conference details. This first conference is going to be an open enrollment conference for us, so there's no cap. As many students register for this, they'll be able to attend with us. And then there are the important dates on the side of the page. The next conference we're going to will be in January, and this is going to be hosted by Columbia University on Columbia's campus. I think it's really cool that some of these conferences are hosted on campuses so that students get to see what it's like on a collegiate campus and decide if the culture is right for them. They can go on tours after the fact, not with us, but happy to help facilitate that if they decide to stay around and tour campuses. This conference, we're going to be capping at 14 people. There are about 750 students. This is entirely a crisis conference. So all of the committees there will be crisis style committees. The big one of the year is Neiman, which is Georgetown's conference. This is our de facto championship conference. I believe it's the second largest Model UN conference in the United States. Over 3,500 students from all across the country come to DC for this conference. There are a range of different committee types. Because this is so competitive, we're probably going to be capping this team at 12 people. So if you're interested in Neiman, I really suggest you lock your spot in early for that. And then finally, we'll round out the year for U.S. conferences by going to Northwestern's conference, again, hosted on their campus. This is the first time for us going to Northwestern. We're really excited. We've heard great things about the conference. This is what I call a mid-major conference. It's not in the top 8 to 10 conferences in the country, but these are really the all-star conferences around the U.S. The colleges really do a great job putting these conferences on, and this will take place in April. Now for the international conferences, which are really the highlight of my year because it allows students to get international exposure. And it's really how Model UN got it started, as us representing the United States at these conferences all across the planet. Normally, a travel team for an international conference will be between 10 and 24 students. 24 is the absolute most I think I've ever taken on a conference, and that was to Lisbon. That was actually the last conference that we went to before the pandemic. That was a great time. But I've led trips all across the globe, throughout Latin America, East Asia, South Asia, Eastern Europe, and Western Europe. So we're really excited to get back onto those planes this year. So the three conferences on our schedule are Yale Model UN Korea, which will take place in November, Yale Model Government Europe, which will take place in March, and then Harvard Model UN India, which is almost a full calendar year from now, next August. Yale Model UN Korea in November is usually a really popular trip because it happens over Thanksgiving break, which means that there are less school days that students have to miss because schools are typically off for Thanksgiving in the States. Yale Model Government Europe this year will be taking place in Brussels, Belgium. So a really easy destination to get to in Europe without transfers from most US major international airports. And then Harvard Model UN India is sort of a particular case in that we'll try to arrange students traveling on the same flight if people feel like coming to Boston or DC. And then there's also a pre-program extension to New Delhi and to see the Taj Mahal with Harvard Model UN India. We'll talk about that in more detail in the spring travel team info session, but want to absolutely mention all of these conferences right now to put them on your radar. So we're going to dive deep into Yale Model UN Korea first. The rest of the two other international conferences in the spring, like I said, we'll cover in more detail in a later training session, and all of that information will also be posted to the website. But Yale Model UN Korea will take place in Seoul during the Thanksgiving break. The conference itself is 3 days, but we organize touring, immersion, and cultural programs around the conference. So we're asking all of the students to arrive by the 22nd, and then they can leave either on the 26th when the conference ends, or they can leave anytime on the 27th. There's no additional fee for that extra day. We figure if you're going to fly all the way to Seoul, you may as well get the most out of it and get to experience as many of the different cultural sites as possible. The flights are normally the biggest cause of anxiety on the international trip, so I want to take a second to really talk in detail about how that process works. And then again, of course, we're going to be here to support, answer questions about all of the flights and logistics. So please don't let that overwhelm you. We're here to really support you in that process. So students are going to be flying into Incheon International Airport. We're asking students to arrive by 6 p.m. local time on the 22nd. If you cannot manage that, please just let me know. We are very flexible with this. We will figure out a solution to make sure that you find an appropriate flight plan to get to Seoul. And like I said, students can depart either on the 26th or 27th. We'll pick up all of the students in Seoul. I won't be available to travel with students. One of the lessons I learned my very first year of All American Model UN is that I always need to be in country at least 3 days ahead of time in the event that my flight gets canceled or rescheduled. I never want a situation where students are arriving in country and there's nobody at the airport to greet them. So I always make sure that I arrive early and I stay late, again, for the same reason, in case student flights are delayed, canceled, or rescheduled. They will never be in country by themselves. I will always be there. There's no visa worries here, which also makes traveling to South Korea pretty easy. And if you would like us to handle your flight booking, please just let me know. Happy to do that. We charge a small fee to help facilitate that. These program overview documents will contain all of the information that you need. It's sort of a one-page cheat sheet that contains all of the hotel information, all of the flight information, important dates, when you should be booking flights, and then the complete itinerary for each of the days. So you'll be able to see each of our touring itineraries. You'll be able to download all of these at allamericanmun.com/pods. And I'm also going to attach them to the email that I'm going to send out following this information session. So each of those pods, each of those program overview documents will have all the logistical information, all the date information, complete itineraries, all the hotels, and emergency contact information. They're really useful. I really suggest printing them off. maybe putting them on your fridge or someplace safe so that you can easily reference them whenever you have questions. I also wanted to talk about safety and security. That's obviously our main priority when we're doing trips, whether in the US or internationally. We have an 11-year proven safety record, and I always get a little bit nervous and have to knock on wood when I put this in writing, but we've never had a major safety or security issue. And that's because we follow a pretty rigorous set of safety and security protocols. You can read all about those again on our website at allamericanmun.com/safety. And of course, whenever we're traveling, US or internationally, we have 24/7 support and contact. So 857-400-9525. If you don't know that number by heart already, you may start to. You can text that number, you can call that number, whether we're in the US or international. It buzzes everyone's phone that's on site. And we always maintain a mentor to student ratio of 8-to-1 or less. So in the event that we get over 16 on a trip, we will start bringing on additional mentors to work with students. And of course, all of the mentors that we bring on, we put through both state and federal background checks. So we take safety and security really seriously. We're here to support and ensure that everybody has an enjoyable time, but most importantly, a safe time, and everybody gets back home in one piece. To briefly review some of the tuition and pricing, for US conferences, if you just want to attend a single conference, that's perfectly fine. We are not expecting everyone with full acceptances to go to all these programs. We know you have other things going on. We know you have family obligations, but a single US conference will be $950 this year. And then we have packages for 3 and 4 conferences if you're interested in those. Next year, the prices for US conferences will be increasing to keep pace with the increased hotel rates that we're being charged at each of these conference centers. Internationally, our conferences, again, these are still pre-pandemic prices, $2,400 per single international conference. The international conferences are a little bit more all-inclusive in that they include usually all of the meals while we're traveling, except for lunches during conference days, maybe a small exception to that. They also include limited medical and liability insurance that are included in those tuition rates. If you're interested in doing multiple international programs with us, whether it's this school year or going into next school year, please consider looking at one of our packages. You can buy packages of 2, 3, and even up to 4 at a time, each one at a higher discounted rate. And those will carry over to the next school year if you don't attend all of the international conferences you plan to this year. So you never have to worry about that. Typically, we try to be as generous as possible with financial assistance. The biggest form that we can offer this year is mainly going to come in the form of installment plans. We don't charge any interest on these. We don't charge any fees on these. This is just to help families better plan out the year financially. The only caveat to that is that the last payment must be received before the last program that the student is attending begins. We will offer some other limited need-based financial assistance. We're still recovering from the pandemic as an organization. Before the pandemic, from 2012 to 2019, we actually gave out over $400,000 in financial assistance, and we just don't have the reserves right now until we are back in operations for a couple of years. If you do need that assistance, please apply for it. I will do the absolute best that I can to help. The other alternative is that we've been working with a charitable foundation for a number of years called the Wilson Fund, who have supported our students to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. The loose agreement that we've made with them is that we won't send any more than 4 to 5 students per year through their application process. So if you're interested in the Wilson Fund, who will cover flights as well as our program costs, please let me know. Like I said, we're going to limit that to 4 or 5 recommendations to them. There are no guarantees, but that is ultimately their call. But we've had a lot of success working with that foundation in the past. So if you're interested in that, just shoot me an email after this meeting. Finally, how do you complete your enrollment? There are 5 steps this year. The first one is to submit an online application. I think most people here have already done that. you only have to apply once. So you don't have to apply for every conference. You don't have to apply every year. If you get a full acceptance, that carries over until your first day of college. If you completed a summer academy, either this summer or in a previous summer, you also still must submit a formal application for us to review. The second step is scheduling a welcome meeting with me. I've done this with probably about 12.5 students already. And this is just so I can answer questions on a one-on-one family basis. But that meeting is pretty quick. It's 10 to 15 minutes. It'll review a lot of the same information in this presentation, but I want to make sure to have a conversation with every family, every student. Parents are encouraged to attend those meetings and ask any questions that they may have. The next step is to submit a student form. Because we are moving into a cohort system, we want to be able to celebrate all of you and showcase who is in the cohort starting in the fall. So submit your headshot and bio on the website, and we'll create a few graphics for you to share if you'd like. The next step is to enroll in the cohort. Like I said, it's $360 for the school year. You'll receive a $360 travel grant for this year only because we are making this transition. And again, you can choose whether you'd like to subscribe as a monthly member, a half-year member, or a full-year member. And then finally, the last step is to choose which conferences you want to attend. Attending conferences with All-American Model UN is really the heart of what we do, and it becomes the capstone for so many students' high school careers, Model UN or otherwise. For the 2 fall conferences, which are, again, UConn and Yale Model UN Korea in Seoul, that deadline will be September 15th. So if you'd like to attend either of those conferences, you'll need to complete all 5 of these steps by September 15th. The spring conference deadlines will be slightly different. They'll be January 5th, except for Columbia, which will have a November deadline because of where it falls on the calendar in January. There just isn't enough time to register and train a team. But all that information will be in the program overview documents. It's all over the website. We'll also have multiple group chats and messages on our online community platform, which everyone will start to get invitations to by September 5th. And other than that, please be in contact with me to discuss questions, what your thoughts are, what some of the stumbling blocks or obstacles may be. Happy to answer and walk through all of those different scenarios. And like I said, we're going to fill those conference teams on a first enrolled basis. Here's a list of important website links in case you're looking to do something and you don't know where on the website you need to go to navigate to find it. Again, I'm going to send this slideshow out so you don't have to take a screenshot or write any of these down, but this will be a sort of glossary for you so you know where exactly on the website all of these resources and forms live. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll open it up for questions. I'll see if anybody has put questions into the chat to read off. If you want to drop off or if you need to drop off now, please feel free. But if not, we are going to enter a little question and answer period to see what questions we have. So one question one student had was, do returning students need to re-earn the competencies? No, they don't. So if you've already earned your competencies, if you've already gotten a full acceptance, you absolutely do not need to redo your competencies. Another student is asking me, when we submit the conference, when may we submit the conferences we'd like to attend? So after you enroll, after you submit your tuition for the conferences, you'll get a confirmation email, which will ask you to choose which conferences you'd like to attend. So after you enroll, after you submit the payment, the tuition, you'll get an email, and that will have a form that will let you select which conferences you're going to attend. The Northwestern Conference I'm being asked about. When is the Northwestern Conference? The Northwestern Conference is in April. It's April 11th to the 14th. Can parents travel with students? That's a great question. If yes, what's the cost for domestic international sites? Parents can absolutely travel with students to either US or international. We don't use parents as chaperones. We ask that you not participate on the programs themselves, but we're happy to help arrange for hotel accommodations. Usually the conferences will have discounted rates for hotel rooms. but if a parent travels, they are responsible for all of their lodging, all of their food, all of their activities and entertainment. That's all the responsibility of the parent. But if you're interested in talking about that in more detail, please let me know. We've definitely had parents do that in the past. Does the $360 travel grant go to conference costs? Another student asked. Yes. So for this year only, we're going to be using the cohort tuition. You will get a grant code that you can use when you then enroll in conferences, and you'll get that $360 deducted from the conference tuitions. Do you know how many students you're taking to the international conferences? That's a great question. Honestly, we don't know yet because this is the first year that we are bringing these back in full since the pandemic. For any international conference, we need at least 8 students to register in order to execute the conference. So if you're interested in the international conferences, please do register so that we can give people the green light. We already have, I believe, 4 people registered for Wyman Korea and 4 people registered for Yale Model Government Europe in Brussels. So I'm highly confident we'll hit that 8 number threshold. Our cap for the internationals is 24 students. I don't think we've ever had to turn somebody away from an international trip, so that's not really a concern of mine. But again, the suggestion from our team is definitely to register early to make sure that you have that spot secured. The Columbia conference is in January. It's, I believe, the 11th to the 14th of January, if I'm not mistaken. All of those dates can be found on the website. So go to the US conferences under the travel team and all the dates will be there. Somebody asked if you can split the grant to cover different costs. All of our programs cost more than $360. If you would like to split 180 and 180 on 2 different ones, I suppose that's possible, but it theoretically shouldn't make a difference if you use 360 on one or 180 on both. But if you have a specific instance, maybe there's something I'm overlooking, please email me. Happy to walk through on that. Not sure if you already talked about this, but how many spots are left on the team? Like I said, we have about 4 students, I believe, signed up for both the international and the US conferences. So depending on the conference, we have somewhere between 8 and 12 seats left on the US teams, and then the international teams have a much higher cap. If you've already registered, okay, this is a great question, Eli. If you've already submitted the tuition for conferences, can you get a partial refund because of the grant? Yes, you can. Please email me any specifics, and I'm happy to work that out. That won't be a problem, Eli. And I think those are all the questions in the chat. If anybody would like to come on their video, if they feel comfortable, or come off of mute and ask a question, happy to have a little conversation. If you want to raise your virtual hand or your actual hand. Chris, I see, I'm thinking you're raising your hand and not waving at me. So
yes.
What do you got?
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Was the Columbia Model UN event, was that the only one that was crisis only, or all the other ones like standard kind of Model UN events?
So the Columbia one is the only one that's fully crisis. There will be crisis elements in each of the other conferences, just at a smaller number. And I even believe at Columbia, they do run 1 or 2 traditional General Assembly type committees. So we may be able to facilitate, if you're looking for just that traditional style of Model UN, to find those committees at Columbia, but Columbia is the only fully crisis conference.
Okay, thanks, Frank.
Anybody else want to come off mute? Then I'm going to go back to the chat questions. Okay, seeing none, we'll go back to the chat.
Hi, Frank. Hold on. I did come off mute.
Okay, there we go.
I actually threw my question in the chat, but I just wanted to kind of clarify what I'm asking. Some, the international conferences, I'm speaking from my older, hearing my older alum, it can have a different emphasis or different protocols and so forth. Will that training be in the cohort or will that be kind of a separate I'm guessing they're even different from the Korean conference to the
Yeah. Great question, Nancy.
European.
It's a little bit of both. So we will be doing, if students are enrolled in specific conferences, we're going to be using breakout rooms a lot during those Tuesday meetings. So we may split off a whole conference team just to do specific training. But then Gabby is also going to be doing one-on-ones and team trainings in addition to. So one thing I didn't talk about in this presentation, but I did have mentioned in some of the individual phone calls I've had, the cohort will require 1 hour of work, 1 to 1.5 hour of work every Tuesday. There's no work in between sessions. We know how busy students are. For every conference you sign up, you should expect 10 to 12 hours of extra prep time that will take place outside of that Tuesday cohort session. And then I think Sash Watt also asked a question about one-on-ones. Yeah, so everyone who's enrolled in specific conferences will do at least 1 or 2, most likely more, one-on-ones with Gabby until Gabby is satisfied with the level of research that each student has done. You're going to be expected to do individual one-on-one meetings with either Gabby or myself. Susan asks, how many seats for Korea in November? So our minimum is 8 and our maximum is probably going to be 18 to 24. I don't anticipate getting anywhere near that upper limit, but a minimum of 8 students. And like I said, we already have 4 confirmed for that conference. Aditi asks, if I enroll for 3 domestic conferences and have to cancel, will those credits transfer over to the next year? It depends when you cancel. So we tend to have a pretty generous cancellation policy. I'll actually go ahead and put that in the chat. It's also in that slideshow. But if you go to allamericanmun.com/terms and find the cancellation policy, there are 3 windows in which you can cancel for. I think it's 100 days plus between 30 and 99 or 31 and 99 and 30 and less. And that'll determine how much credit moves forward. If we're able to fill your seat with another student, then we will give you the full credit to use next year. It's not our intention to try to use terms and conditions to steal tuition money from people that have to cancel. We just need to cover all of our bases because we're paying for the hotel and the conference fees and the touring and the meals in advance. If we're able to fill your seat, you can absolutely use that credit for next year. Somebody asked if after this meeting, if we still have to do individual one-on-one meetings. Yes, I would prefer it so that I can address any specific instances, specific questions, and then give specific advice for conferences that I may think I recommend you attend with us next year. So even if you're in this meeting now and you haven't done a one-on-one intro welcome meeting for the next school year, please do schedule that or continue to hold that on your calendar so that we can do that. Okay, I think that is all of
Wait,
the.
another question. Sorry, Erica, what's your question?
All right. Thanks, Gabby. You mentioned this, but I just wanted some clarification. If you're looking at flights for these conferences, are the students supposed to fly in on that date that the conference says it starts, or a date earlier, or how does that normally work? I mean,
Yeah, great question. So each conference will have different arrival information. After students register, you'll get that program overview document, and even before, because I'm going to send those out tomorrow with specific instructions for each individual conference. So you'll know by what time you're supposed to arrive, which airport you're supposed to arrive into. For the internationals, like for the Korea conference, just because that's the closest one, we're asking everyone to arrive on the 22nd by 6 p.m. local time. If that doesn't work for some reason, please let me know. We will find a solution. That's what we do. We're problem solvers on international travel. 10 plus years of experience have taught us a lot of tricks for booking flights. So happy to find a solution for you.
All right. Thank you.
Couple more coming in chat. Eli is asking, when will we receive the form to select conferences if we've already registered? I will get those to you as soon as possible. So if you registered in just the last hour or so, I haven't had a chance to look at my email. Those are all going to be manual emails for me. Those aren't auto responses from a system. So just bear with me. If something happens and you feel like I haven't communicated something or sent you the right form, always feel free to text me and I'll get back to you with that information as quickly as I can. But you'll receive that confirmation email from us usually within 12 hours of when you submit payment. Great question from a parent coming in asking about feedback and progress. We are going to be measuring skill assessments throughout the year, and at the beginning of the year, the midpoint of the year, and then at the end of the year, we'll be sending reports to each parent as to the progress that we see in student performance. And again, we're going to be looking at things like research skills, speaking skills, writing skills, and procedure skills. The procedure skills aren't quite as adaptable to other aspects of life, but the other three are really important. So we will be providing individualized feedback and remarks on what we think students need to work on throughout the year. So that's a great question. That's a new improvement. That's one of the things we're adding on because of the cohorts, because we'll have a lot more of a consistent touch point with students. We'll be able to do things like provide feedback, targeted feedback to both students and to parents on what we see. Let's see if I have any more hands being risen.
Hey, Frank.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, one last, this is a general question. Are the kind of in the spirit of, I know you'll have all the dates and I can look on the calendar, but just like high level, the spirit of when they try to schedule, whether it's UConn or the Columbia, et cetera, or Georgetown, do they try to schedule those with in mind that kids are in class and that sort of thing? Do they try to do like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or is it all over the board?
Yeah, great question. For those of you new to the Model UN scene, that makes a lot of sense to ask. Conferences are almost always Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 4-day conferences will be half of the day Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So at least 2 days of the conference will always be on the weekend. For those of you that were looking at the website a little bit earlier in the summer, you may remember I had Georgia Tech listed on our website. That conference, for whatever reason, was on a Monday and a Tuesday. And I know it's difficult to miss school for a lot of students. So we substituted that for UConn Model UN. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Getting another message from a parent whose student did the summer program. They're asking about feedback or report cards. We don't have any evaluations from the summer, any formal evaluations. We do have self-inventory information that we will be sending out in a report about this. Is something that we started doing last year, but we have students self-evaluate on a number of different skills at the beginning and conclusion of sessions to see if we're successful in helping to improve upon those skills. Those are all self-reported. But if you'd like to receive individual one-on-one feedback, please feel free to schedule a time with me. Happy to talk through individual student feedback. Another question about scheduling. Do we need to take Thursday and Friday off for a 3-day conference or only Friday? If a conference is only 3 days, then Friday is the only day you would need to miss of class, most likely, unless you're really local to where that conference is. For 4 days, you're going to have to arrive in the city by no later than 3 p.m. So depending on where you are in the country and where the conference is on the country, that's something for you to figure out. But then on a 4-day conference, you will miss all of Friday for school. Okay, one last chance for questions, one more call for questions. And again, always feel free to email or text us with your questions. We'll get back to you as soon as we can with those answers. Okay. If not, I'm going to officially end this info session. Thank you so much. I know a lot of information was put out there today. I hope you can take some time to process it. Gabby put our email addresses in the chat box. So if you want to get in touch with either of us by email, you know where to go to send a message. Please be in contact. Please use us as a resource. I'm going to stop recording now so I don't go on forever. But if you do want to hang around and just say hello to people, please feel free to do that after I stop recording. And Susan, yes, a recording of this session will be sent out to everyone who registered. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night and hope to work with you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.